for people who are listening or watching this, well, we can try explaining again what we're doing. We are in the late stages of design for what was supposed to be network packet recording, but is involving a few other things here. So let's jump into what we were talking about. Okay, so the issue is that when you have something like audio or an image or network packets, there are multiple things that you might do. And this was imagined in this thing called remote value, which Carlo Barbieri was working on, although I don't think much has been done on it recently. And remote value, the idea is that these are things that are being requested of something like a mobile device. But there are different ways that the request can happen. There can be something where you request to the mobile device, when submit is pressed, the mobile device, you just get that value, like the value of a magnetometer reading, as a single instantaneous value. Another thing that could happen is that when you set up the request for the value, that a gauge comes up on your phone or whatever it is, or in your notebook, that shows you the current fluctuating value of the magnetic field, let's say. And then, well, that's more like, yeah, and then I guess that at some moment you press submit, and whatever that current value was becomes the value that is sent back as the result. Another case is the snapshot case, which is like image capture or audio capture, where there is a real-time thing that's going on. Well, actually, it's like image capture, not quite like audio capture. There's a real-time thing that's going on, and you have a GUI that you are pressing. So, for example, if I do audio capture here, that doesn't work because we're in a version where it doesn't work, I suppose. It is working in the head branch build, yes?
Yes.
Well,
It should.
actually, no.
Wonderful.
So there's a problem there.
Yes.
Something is very wrong there.
Can you check create UUID?
That's spectacular. Many things would not work with that not working. So that is 2 days ago's build. That's a bit odd. Shall I try a more recent? Is this more recent one? Let's try this one.
Try Cloud Deploy where you did create UUID.
Okay, well, there in this version it is working. So let's see, that is the version from the 10th. So it started failing on the 11th. Okay, so let's try audio capture here. Okay, so this is a typical, we capture something. By the way, that button being gray is crazy. Does anybody, I mean, I thought we were agreeing to change that. Is that, Carla, did you get that?
Yeah, I'm taking that to the sign.
Okay, did that happen already or not?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, okay, so what I wanted to highlight, okay, so there's the notion of a snapshot like this. Then there is the notion of a recorder with start and stop buttons. See, this is all rather confused. Then there's the notion of a history. But this shows up in multiple different cases, right? And Roger, what you've got here, so audio record, which apparently only works in the X-kernel build, except it didn't work there either. Oh, I've got to give it a device. So if
You can just say automatic, that should work.
Okay. Okay. So now what's happening? It is now recording?
Yes.
And so what do I now do? So now I say
you could say audio stop, for example.
Of that audio stream.
Of that, yeah.
And
now you can say audio of that audio stream, and that should give you the result.
Wow, this is pretty wild. So this audio record function starts off okay, and now if I say spectrogram of that or something, okay, how do I get the image? How do I get?
You can ask for normal of that.
Okay, but that's not how it's going to work, right?
No, this is not for the next version, so we are focusing on other things at the moment.
But wait a second. But spectrogram has to return something.
Oh yes.
This
This
is
the
experimental
prototype.
functionality.
What is? What I'm seeing here. Spectrogram 4.11.3 will return this still. Is that
Yes,
correct?
exactly.
Okay. Okay. All right. So gosh, this is pretty funky what this does. So audio stop returns nothing. It doesn't return the audio stream. And this audio stream thing here, gosh, can you walk me through this? This seems kind of weird.
Carlo, why don't you walk through it?
Okay, so this is, we introduced this to kind of have something that works similarly to audio play, which does a similar thing. So audio play and audio record create a stream and set the state of the stream to either recording or playing.
So if I do that for 11, I can say
Yes.
audio play of 11.
Well,
No,
9.
9, okay.
Yeah, wow. And this is some other branch in the prototype that is, I guess, conflicting.
But it's not playing, I don't think, unless...
No, I mean, there's clearly some mistake here.
Okay, but fine. But
something that doesn't
normally,
work, but you should be playing.
This would be playing now.
Yes.
Wow, that's pretty wild. So, but it's playing in a different thread, right? So it's playing asynchronously.
Yes, the idea is that everything here is programmatic and asynchronous. To have an alternative to the GUI, because...
Okay, but we don't do that, for example, with list animate. We don't have a mechanism for doing this.
No.
So this is some new mechanism. Roger, can you talk about this? Is there any other place where this mechanism is being used?
No, this is one place where, for audio, real time actually matters.
Yes, I understand, but I mean, we could imagine a similar thing for something like an animation.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not saying we shouldn't have that. I'm just saying that that's not what it does, the thing that was designed for version 6.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
How does this dovetail with scheduled task and also with streams, like as in files? It's not a stream in that sense, but it's closer to a task actually.
So, yes, we tried to make this work with the task framework. It just seemed to unnecessarily complicate the whole business of just playing and stopping an audio file or an audio object. Mainly because it's kind of complicated to get a task object to work asynchronously without launching a new kernel, which seems a bit ridiculous just to play an audio file.
Well, isn't that what like URL submit, all the stuff that uses curl does?
It has a separate process. It has a separate thread.
Separate process, separate process, not separate kernel.
Yes. So with session submit, from what I'm not particularly familiar with the task framework, but from what I understand, the two options are session submit and local submit. And
we did go through the exercise of trying to cast this design on top of that. And you have to go through a few stages of administration through the task framework to get to what you want.
Yeah.
So for a casual user of audio, that seems like, why do I have to go through this administrative process that the task people have?
No, it doesn't make sense. But what I'm concerned about is this idea that there is an asynchronous thing that's running here. Mm-hmm. And we have special, I mean, we clearly have task stop and those kinds of things.
That's right.
I can imagine audio play returning a task object.
We looked at that, okay? We went through that, but it has, as I said, Carlo did that exercise. We have one such, you know.
Okay, but I mean, for example, this will be an example of something that returns. What did that just do? Why didn't that return a task object?
Well, try it on, I don't know what's on the prototype branch.
Okay, let me try it on a more civilized area. Let's try it in 11.2. Yeah, there we go. So that is a task that's running in an external thread that is not a Wolfram Engine thread. Am I making sense?
Yes.
It's a URL task, right? Which I would think was similar to your playing, audio playing task.
Yes.
And then we have a huge collection of functions that do things like stop the task, pause the task, and so on. Makes sense?
Yep.
So I'm trying to understand. I mean, if you were to do, I mean, if we were to have some kind of audio, because we're also talking for the network packet recording stuff, we're also talking about an asynchronous version of that too. And it seems like what you're doing here. Okay, so you're returning an object. What you're doing with audio record is returning an object here that is the audio stream, as opposed to returning a task object, which you then need to extract an audio stream from. So the difference here is this is initiating something where.
I think that's correct, Stephen. Yeah.
But we could potentially unify these things by having. I mean, ultimately, you're just going to say audio of this to actually get the audio. Is that correct?
For the audio record, yes.
And for audio play, what are the operations that you're going to do?
Audio play, that is kind of a different category because that doesn't generate an audio, that is created from an audio.
Okay.
So we don't have any functionality to extract the audio from the audio stream.
But that's an output audio stream, and this is an input audio stream.
Yes.
But they say the same thing. They look the same here.
This is something that, yeah, initially they were different, then we merged them together, but yes, I agree that is slightly problematic.
Okay, so
the other thing that will happen with audio is that you will have the ability to have infinite length audio.
Which is currently not true.
Right.
How?
By having it compute, to infinity.
With a generator of some kind.
That's right. And that can, right. And, you want to stop those too eventually. Hopefully.
But I'm a bit worried that something as fundamental as a generator gets developed in isolation just for audio when we are supposed to have a bunch of meetings to design that for everything.
Which generator?
What are you talking about?
It's a different kind of generator, Carlo.
Is it though?
Yes, Carlo.
I think so. I mean, it's generating sine waves and things.
Yeah, but it's still like an infinite list.
Well, okay, fair enough.
Again, you can ask for a few more things.
What's the name of one of those things? Audio generator?
That's the current one.
Yeah, this is not really what we're talking about. This is different.
But this is not listed as experimental.
No, and that's not what we're talking about.
Different.
But this is not infinite.
No. This
that's why it's not
audio.
what we're talking about.
Right. Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. So, look, it seems to me. I mean, what would make the most sense to me would be that audio play, at least in the first approximation, returns a task object that, can be stopped, paused, everything you would normally do with a task object. Now, I admit that the name task object is a little bit weird for play, and maybe there's a way to deal with that, but let's worry about that in a second. But in terms of functionality, having something which is like the URL task here is, very much the right thing.
How the hell do you pause a task object?
You say task stop, I believe. Task suspend. Now, I admit that doesn't seem, for audio, that's, a weird name. By the way, we have a comment from the live stream, somebody saying, what about if somebody didn't realize the recording was asynchronous? Seems like there should be some UI indication that the task is running. Actually, there is in the case of this audio stream. That's what that playing and stopped thing. It's dynamically picking that up from the state of the task. And similarly, in a task object, there is also a dynamic indication, except that I think in a case like this, there can't be because it really doesn't know. Well, actually, I'm not sure. I think when the task is over, it's supposed to have a dynamic indication in this task object sort of symbolic representation. Okay, so just to understand, I mean, yes, there's a Roger. Did that answer your question? Like task suspend?
Yeah, we went through this exercise. It looks very clumsy. From an casual audio user.
Okay, that's because
and for where we want to build it to going forward, which we don't have now, and we're going to have to work on machine learning projects next. So it will be a little bit, it will be, paused one iteration.
Okay,
so, but that doesn't mean that, unless tasks work really well, which, anecdotally they do not.
Well, I think they do now. I think they do. I mean, they certainly, after lots of effort, I think they do. But let's not worry about that. Let's just try to understand the semantics of what we're trying to do. So one thing is audio play is basically running an asynchronous task in a thread that is a non-Wolfram engine thread. True? Audio record has another special feature. So audio play.
What do you mean that is a non-Wolfram engine thread?
Isn't there well, I don't know. There isn't a Wolfram engine that is being run in that thread. Is that correct?
For audio?
For audio playing, yes.
I mean, it's a subsystem of the Wolfram engine, but it doesn't, it's evaluator free, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, yes. It's evaluator free.
Okay, fine. But audio record now is a somewhat different story because it has the feature that it has a couple of special features. So one feature is that it is running in a separate thread asynchronously, right? But boy, this is really funky. I mean, so audio record has returned a handle when run, returns this audio stream handle, which has a GUI indicator of whether it is in fact recording at that time. But then, so if it is recording at any given time, no, I'm really confused. At any given time, I can pick up that handle and I can say audio of that, and it will take that stream and it'll give me the audio to date in that stream. Is that correct?
So yeah, we need to iron out some things there because writing default memory and getting the data at the same time, having two file streams open at the same time seems a bit tricky. But ideally, especially if you
what do you think
in memory rather.
Right, but what do you think the semantics are supposed to be? So audio record returns an audio stream, and then, can I not extract the audio from it until it is stopped? Or can I extract the audio at any time?
You should be able to extract the audio at any time.
And moreover, I would think you should be able to write a piece of code that extracts the last 5 seconds of audio at any time.
Yes.
Okay, which is very similar to the device framework, where we have things like device read latest, right? Or device read. I mean, this is a continuous stream version of something a bit like this, if I'm not mistaken. Okay.
Yes.
Well, in any case, so let's just loop back to more of these things. So we've got a bunch of these sources of continuous data. So for example, let's just make a little list of these things. So we've got, and let me save this away in the remote value, in the place where I've been saving information about remote value. Among the sources are things like, so we've got, first of all, sources. We've got audio recording. We've got camera. We've got network packet capture. We've got HID devices. We've got devices. We've got things like mouse position.
Which is a HID device.
Yeah, I mean that's current value values, because that would be things like plus other current values. So that's things like window position and so on. Did you find that, please?
I have not yet.
Okay, I'll find it myself.
I think an interesting question is, what is the current value of audio? Is there like a pressure thing that we can extract?
Well, yeah,
It seems to be in client values.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
What are we calling this? Okay. Okay, so there are these things. Then there are types of recording, basically, types of value acquisition. So one of those is instantaneous value. Okay, and that would be things like current image and mouse position. That right? Then we've got GUI, snapshot GUI, basically. And that will be things like image capture. Is that right? Then we've got...
I mean, hopefully not, because image capture is really a weird beast. Remember, we were talking about this with respect to controls. Image capture prints the results. You cannot bind it to a dynamic variable. So it's not very good for using forms and stuff like that, or manipulate.
What do you mean? I mean, so image capture has a GUI.
Yeah, I'll open it. I mean, unless you don't want to show your face to the whole.
No, I don't mind. Just let me.
I mean, it's just that it has a GUI, and then when you see it click record, it just prints the image below. So it doesn't work like a slider.
Let's see. Let's put it on device that actually has. That's a document camera. Okay, there we go. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, so what do I do here? So then what happens? I have to take the picture here, right? Oh, I see. That's horrifying. Copy frame to clipboard. What is this weird thing? Stop camera. Okay, capture frame to notebook. I see. That's totally weird. Why doesn't it work like a dynamic control like slider? I mean, that would be, okay, so that would be, does this work like a dynamic control?
So I guess we have the same problem with this audio functionality that's being designed. That it will be difficult to use it as a control in a manipulate.
Well, but that's a different question from here. I'm going to delete this thing here. People understand the issue.
Use something like, I mean, this is like, it's like a complete manipulate on its own, if you want to think about it that way. It's not like a component that you use in a manipulate.
Yeah,
Right.
It's a complete manipulate on its own. And how do you use another manipulate inside another manipulate?
Well, you can do that.
that's not a problem. I mean, there's the UX problem, and that's one thing. But the other thing is that, for example, for all this stuff like,
I mean, it might be interesting to design it, design something that is an actual control. But
Yeah.
normally we've separated the two,
Yeah, but
The slider
I mean,
is a control, but manipulate is not.
no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that we're talking.
So you're complicating things, aren't you?
The thing we were talking about with respect to client value was integration, say, in the iOS app. And so it might even be modal, but sometimes it's necessary to have controls that let you
Okay,
select.
so you're asking for a control version for what?
Well, okay. So there are two subcases here. What this is, the conclusion here is that there's a snapshot GUI, and there are two subcases of a snapshot GUI. One case is as a control component, and the other is as a complete GUI. Is that correct? Which means that.
And I think Carlo was asking about control component, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, my claim would be
so a complete GUI, and that the way this operates is the way you get a value is by quotes printing. And in this one, the way you get a value is by by a dynamic variable. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like
okay, so we've got okay, let's not go on with that, because we've got yet another case coming up. Okay? Because the case of, let's talk about, this one is instantaneous, right? Snapshot GUI, instantaneous, snapping instantaneous values. Am I making sense? And I can't spell. Instantons. Wow, I haven't heard about those in a long time. Okay. So the next case is essentially a time series capture GUI. And that's things like audio capture.
Well, I would say temporal.
Fine.
Temporal
capturing GUI.
There was yet another case which was similar to dynamic binding, but the other way around, which was like a gauge. So you want to have a gauge of the decibel volume in the room you are in, and you're not recording anything. That's dynamic of something.
Probably okay, right. So that's the instantaneous value. So, well, that's a gauge where it doesn't do anything, but that's really like that's like the snapshot GUI, where you're just showing the gauge part of the snapshot GUI.
When you say gauge, values, but gauge, or do you mean something else? So we have something that's formally called gauges. Are those what you guys are talking about?
Well, they could be if it was a scalar value, yes, but it could just be like we have in image capture, where there's a real-time display, right? Snapping instantaneous values, but okay, displaying a real-time preview, then snapping instantaneous values. Does that make sense? That's that case.
And I think, remember, I think I sent you at some point like a prototype of how all these things could be built with the current image. So dynamic of current image is just a gauge of the webcam. And you can build one where you can freeze and bind to dynamic each time you want. And you can have one that continues.
That's part of why it's there, I guess.
That's why current image is there, right?
Yeah.
Instantaneous value, right? But the question is that Carlo is making the claim, which I don't entirely believe, that everything else can be built just from having an instantaneous value. For example, I don't know.
That's not true for audio, for example, because audio usually works the other way around.
Well, you could have an instantaneous value. It's the displacement of the microphone, but it's a little weird. But let's keep going, please. We've got
Good luck with
temporal.
that.
What's that?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, right.
No, I say that conceptually it can be built.
Right. And with software radio, it's even more insane. We've got a gigahertz. We've got, electrons moving at a gigahertz. Okay. So look, we've run really over time here, but let's just continue for a moment on this. Someone from our live stream, I'll paste their comment in here. One of the lovely things about these live streams is that they are largely anonymous because we have no idea who these various handles are, but this is a comment. It's kind of true. Okay, let's keep going here though. Okay, we've got a temporal capturing GUI. And then we have programmatic temporal capturing. Am I making sense? Which right now we think of as a different function. So the temporal capturing GUI would be something like network packet capture. And here, our programmatic temporal capturing would be network packet recording right now.
Is device read time series the same?
Yes, this is device read time series.
Okay.
Now, for devices, we don't have this temporal capturing GUI. We could. We perfectly well could. For HID devices, we have, what do we have for HID devices? We have controller state.
I don't think we have anything except for instantaneous.
Right, so there we have, okay, so. Okay.
Or current value is in that same genre.
It is, right. Okay, so we've got these ones all just return. Okay, so where is audio record in this whole picture? It is, okay, so then we've got what we might call, okay, so this is quotes fire. Okay, there are two cases of this. The fire and forget case. The fire and forget, but the fire and forget synchronous. Well, actually, we could call this the blocking case, but it's also fire and forget, as in you start it and there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe it puts up a GUI where you can do something about it, but then there is the non-blocking case. Actually, this isn't even correct. I mean, what is audio record? Where does it fit into this ontology?
Into the non-blocking case.
Of this?
Yes.
Can you give it a time to record for?
Yes, with an option.
Okay, but that's already humph. Are you sure it fits into this case? Because I think of this case as, okay, so
it's definitely programmatic temporal capturing.
Yes, and it is definitely non-blocking.
Okay, well, so in that case, audio record, the way that's working is, it is bringing back a thing whose value is going to be the result. So these things here all simply return
accumulated stuff.
Right, the time series effectively. I'm going to put time series in quotes. Whereas this case does not return the time series, it returns a handle to the accumulating it returns a handle to the accumulator, so to speak.
Right.
Yes.
And then there's a separate step. So then, and then this non-blocking case also supports, pause, stop functions. Does it, those are, right?
Yes, correct.
Yes. So you can continue accumulating.
Right, exactly. Whereas in these cases, it's like one time, but it has the nice feature in this case that it simply returns the goods, so to speak. It returns the thing you were trying to compute. Okay,
Right.
so with this outline, let's just take a look at what are different things. And then, okay, we've got another case. Actually, we've got another case here. We've got another non-blocking case. This is non-blocking. Okay, another non-blocking case is the non-blocking callback case. Okay, which is analogous to, do we have a device submit? I can't remember. No, we do not.
It's device execute asynchronous.
Oh, are we going to change that?
It's on Igor's to-do list.
Who's project managing that? Carla, go find out who's project managing that, please.
Okay.
Stephen, there's also the temporal capturing GUI just as a control.
I think he listed it above.
No, that's instantaneous capture. Like there's 4 of them: temporal, instantaneous, and then.
Okay, hold on. I don't understand that.
Control
Let's just consider the non-blocking case for a second here. So the way this works, it has a callback function. Has a callback when the data has been captured, or e.g. when an event is seen in the data. Right? As opposed to this case where you pick up the handle. This is a little bit weird. I mean, these are 2 cases, because in this case, this is returning a task object, okay, which is merely a controlling the asynchronous process. It's not a thing where you can just, well, actually you can go ask the task object, what expression did you get as your result? So you can do the same thing as asking for audio over the audio stream. Am I making sense? We've already got that kind of functionality for a task object. But this also provides the capability of having a handler function which does a callback. And this also supports pause and stop. So I mean, really, this case, I really think is covered in this case, although not in the UI that you've developed here. I think. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think one thing that would make it much easier to work with these task objects is if there was a concept of like sending a general, kind of like poking the task object with a general event, right? So you'd be able to submit some kind of event to the task like audio pause or audio stop, right? Then it makes a little bit more sense. You get the task object and somehow send an event of pause or stop or something, and then it reads a little bit better than running task suspend or task resume or something like that.
Well, that's true. And the other point is that the task object's GUI could perfectly well sport certain buttons that do that, which is what you're doing here with audio stream, right? You have both. Okay, so in this case, the accumulator has a visible, manifestation that contains controls.
No, those are not controls. Those are just indicators.
Oh, so you can't stop it?
No, because for that, you would use the GUI case, I guess. the idea is that with these, the control is purely programmatic.
Why do you think that the GUI case shouldn't be stoppable with audio stop? Because it's returning the wrong thing. That's the problem. Because it isn't, the GUI case actually isn't returning.
Yeah, it's an object on its own, and everything is
It's not
going
running
inside it.
asynchronously. That's the real case.
Yeah.
That's the real thing, I think. But we could imagine in these blobs here, I think we could imagine having controls here, having GUI controls here. That is, you generate this thing, and it also has a programmatic control that can be done asynchronously. But if you're looking right at it, you probably could just press a button in it. Am I making sense?
Sure, but it seems like it ends up in a bit of a duplication of functionality, given that there is another GUI already exists for that.
Maybe. Okay, so that's a possible thing. Okay, now let's listen to Carlo's point about his 4 cases and what we maybe have not captured here.
Now you have a snapshot GUI as 2 subcomponents. And I think the temporal capturing GUI should have the 2 subcomponents, control and a complete.
What is audio? I don't understand. How would audio capture be a control?
Well, it's modal, just like the way file name setter works.
Okay, let's remind ourselves how that works.
Or it doesn't even need to be modal, because you can just play
Okay,
with
file name setter. So you're saying file name setter
of dynamic of X.
Okay.
And then evaluate dynamic of X somewhere else.
Well, whatever, I go some random place and I pick a file and okay, so what's your point?
My point is that, you see, that's something that has to block somehow, just like the audio recorder. But the audio recorder doesn't need to block. Could have a button that says start recording, then you stop recording, and then it binds at the end. When you click OK, it binds.
I see. Okay, so this is communicating value. Yeah, okay, by binding. Communicating value by binding a variable. And so your point here, this is communicating value by the return from the function, right?
Yeah, and I mean, my design strategy for forms is that it's very easy to build the second from the first, not so much the other way around.
Okay, so communicating value by binding a variable. Okay. I mean, there could be, and why isn't that something like, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a different kind of function that does that. Okay.
Can't you just, let's say that we have this thing that we call audio recording. It's programmatic, fire forget, and eventually a value gets assigned. Okay. If you make that value, you get a variable to be that. Can't you make that dynamic and do what you want?
Hold on. You're saying audio recording is a blocking or a non-blocking case?
It's blocking. It returns a value eventually, and an audio object. And if you set X equal to that, can't you make that X be your dynamic thing that you?
I would think so. You can just say dynamic.
What if you wanted non-blocking? Like if you have it alongside a slider or something like that?
But when
I'm not sure what that would mean, though, given audio.
When would you sort of?
Well, here's an example where you want the non-blocking case. So let's say you're doing an image capture, but you want X to be continually set to dynamic. I mean, look, there's a simple case. I mean, I just say, if I say something like dynamic, what do I want to do here? I want to say dynamic of Y equals current image. Can I do that?
Yeah.
And then I say dynamic of edge detect of y. Okay, now I go and do this, and everything's cool, right?
But you sort of need to accumulate something up if you're going to
Look at Stephen. Can you pull up the documentation for form control and look at the first example?
This thing here.
Yeah. So basically, in that thing, you have to click submit to bind, and you can type continuously, and it doesn't affect. So this is kind of like accumulating things. In this case, it's doing quantity, so it's talking to alpha, so it's not really something we can do in real time as you type.
So hold on. This is the case where you're saying this is a GUI that is giving you a preview in real time. Am I making sense? But let's see. It's a preview in real time, and then it has a button that says give the value. Is that what you're saying? Or I don't understand.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I'm saying that this type of UX can work also when you have to accumulate.
Why? How? I don't understand. If there's a single button, how does that deal with it? Because how far is it accumulated? Oh, you mean
you would have two buttons. You would have a button for record and stop, and another for submit. And it's only when you click submit that you bind.
I see. So that's different from, well, wait a minute. Audio capture has, let's just understand what that's doing. So audio capture has a button. Oops. What is its submit button? So that's the record button. That's the pause button, and the stop is the submit button. So, I mean, that has exactly that. Audio capture has exactly that functionality, right? So audio capture, that it has a start, pause, stop plus submit, right? Carlo, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, but it doesn't bind. It returns.
But yes, I understand. But how would you? Okay. Don't we have a generic way of doing that binding by basically just saying dynamic of x equals that?
That depends on whether it's blocking or not.
I don't understand this. Oh, I see. By binding a variable in real time, but what is it bound to? Is it bound to the stream so far, or what?
Oh, so you click record, you record 5 seconds, then you click stop, and then you click submit, and then when you click submit.
No, I understand, but it only binds. What's the point of that? Why not just say dynamic of x equals that?
Because then you can use it in manipulate, you can use it in forms, you can use it wherever.
No, but I understand. But so can you here? I just did that here.
You not quite. You cannot do that. You cannot put that as a control in a manipulate. You have to explicitly use another variable, use dynamic. And then when you start dealing with the association in the form objects, blah, 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 suppose you have some further validation.
All right, so this is a case we don't fully understand. I mean, this is question mark. This is Carlo's case. Okay, but let's go back to what we were trying to solve right now, okay, which we need to get straightened out. So I don't think, look, we're not going to change this for this version. For this version, we're going to have the experimental audio record function, and it will return an audio stream, but I don't think that's ultimately the right thing. I mean, the whole point is we need these generic, these generic functions, pause, stop, et cetera, which we have got for the task framework, although they have names that involve the word task. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to add either a new task function like task signal or task interrupt or task event or maybe even it's something that you can call as a property of the task object, so that you can have custom, names for these, like, that aren't specific to tasks, right?
Right. But I also think that even in this case, when you return a visible accumulator, the accumulator could sport buttons. And look, this whole question about whether task stop is too confusing when you're saying audio record, and audio record returns a task object. Once it's returned a task object, it is not so obscure to say task stop. But in any case, that would be my suggestion for how to do that, although I agree that there may be some dressing that can be provided there that will help it. Let me get rid of my dynamics, my X and Y as dynamic variables. I suspect that's going to cause trouble. Okay, so now the next issue is in the blocking case, right? There are many criteria. The thing we were coming to is there are different criteria. So first of all, these cases are not consistent with the image capture case, which does this weird printing thing. Why does image capture not simply have, so image capture basically can okay, image capture is like kind of a stem cell or something. No, that's the wrong way to put it. It kind of stays and it spawns other things. Whereas audio capture just says, okay, I'm done, and returns, right? So that's the difference here, which is, okay, so the control stays, the object stays, but basically prints results. So that's really only useful. Image capture is not programmatically useful. Is audio capture programmatically useful?
Yeah.
How?
It's modal. You do your thing, and when it returns, you get an audio object.
No, I understand that. But so what you could say, what you cannot do with image capture, what I could do is I could put in a piece of code. I could say, if audio capture of blah, if some audio processing of audio capture, if I said boo, then do another audio capture. See what I'm saying?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, but that's why.
But that will work, right? If the first audio capture, it will bring up, what does it do if I say that? If I say, what the heck does that do? If I say, table of audio capture, well, no. Worst case is I say do to audio capture 2. What did that do? Why is there an audio capture showing on the screen? Okay, well, let me try running that audio capture. And then, ooh, I got another one. And then I run that one, and boom, nothing comes back. So those are just, they just fell in the forest.
If you did table, it would come back, right?
Well, let's take a look at what
do does not return anything, does it?
No, I understand that, but I'm now totally confused. Okay, so let's look at this. So this is as a side effect, it is bringing up the GUI, right? It is like the input function, if I'm making sense, right? So this audio capture
exactly. Yeah,
brings up the GUI as a side effect.
meaning that evaluation can't finish until you're finished.
Right, but I mean, this is like me saying table of input.
Yes.
2.
Yep. Like a modal dialog box.
Right. Okay. Now, why does image capture not work that way? Because it's useful, in the case of image capture, it might be useful to generate multiple pictures. I mean, as a practical matter, what one wants here, this is quite a grotesque interface in some ways. Okay, let's put it on my document camera. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I take one picture. Oh, why did that happen? Well, who knows? But basically, this is now printing, which is really, really weird. I mean, that's very analogous to if I do manipulate x01, and I go here and I say paste snapshot, move it, paste snapshot. Right, that's going to do what the? Oh, wow, that's really funky. Did you see what that's doing?
Yeah.
It's printing the most recent first. That's really weird. Is that what image capture does too? I have to get image capture to actually work somewhere. Let's try it again here.
Was that what you modeled it on when you did it originally?
Which?
Image capture.
No, that was not what was thought about there. Okay, so there I get one thing. Let me move my pen there, and then let me press it again. Okay, so that's in fact that is what it's doing. So it is the most recent image is being printed first. So it is like this the paste snapshot. Ugh. Okay. All right. Let's just look what we've got to do right now. So we clearly need to discuss this further because this is kind of a mess. But partly because we're dealing with things. I mean, we had talked about extensively before the concept of something like a magnetometer. Same with a mouse, which has both an instantaneous value and a history. So, for example, what we don't have here is any notion, like for our mouse position here, we could imagine a generic function. Okay, so let's consider design here.
So there are cases where the only thing that makes sense is to capture a history. Like for sound, the instantaneous value of your microphone is, more or less useless.
Not 100% useless, I have to say. It's a pressure sensor.
Sure. Okay. But for broad use cases, it's,
Okay, let's consider the following thing. How would we do something like this? Do we have any way to do this right now? Record, let's imagine we want to say record time series. And we want to say mouse position, and then we want to say roughly TDT. Right? We have a similar thing for device read. So if we look at device read time series, yeah, we've got the same TDT structure. So in a sense, device read time series could in principle read, I mean, it isn't, I mean, we could have a function read time series or something, or, well, record time series.
Does device treat HID devices as actual devices?
I do not know. In principle, it could. I mean, it certainly could open the HID device. Let's try it. I mean, we've got, what is the, how do we get that list of HID devices?
System information, if nothing. That's probably a more direct way, but system information would certainly list it.
Well, controller state lists the state of all HID devices. He says, device type, Mac OS X. I don't even know what that is. Mac OS X interface device. Let's try seeing what happens if I just feed that in there. Okay, let's I think controller information.
I think it said that the product name was a screen display.
Well, so what the heck is that? Look at that. Now I've got an audio device sitting there. I don't even understand that because I've got many audio devices on this. Look at that. What on earth are those? That's another can of worms, right? Is the HID controls for those devices. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Which actually for sound is not completely silly because you might easily have that on a microphone.
Or on a keyboard.
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so let's just look in system information here. Devices. Where is my keyboard? Oh, you know what? Maybe my keyboard is connected to my... No, where's my keyboard? I have no idea. I mean, usually I thought the keyboard was listed here. Yeah, I don't think, and what's even more bizarre is that I think I have many more, I've got a giant list of audio devices. In fact, you can see that something is fishy here because I look at my audio output devices list, right? I've got multiple audio output devices.
But evidently only one with buttons that communicate with the machine.
Maybe. But what I'm surprised is my keyboard isn't here.
I'm using Windows here, and I also don't see my keyboard. I recall in the past having seen that.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, we have the notion of current value of a keyboard event.
Oh no, okay, I have it. It's just listed very weirdly. I have this wireless keyboard, and it lists it under that rather than as a keyboard.
Okay, but so here, for example, this bizarre thing. Okay, so current value of shift key. If I say dynamic, oops. If I say dynamic of that, then that will tell me whether I'm pressing my shift key. So that's been routed to current value there. But okay, be this as it may, what were you asking? You were asking whether you can read from the mouse device. Well, since I can't find the mouse device here, I obviously can't read from it. But it would be reasonable, in principle, one could have a current value time series where I could say mouse position or something like this, and then I would say TDT.
Yeah.
And that would be a programmatic recording of the current value. As opposed to something where I bring up, where I could also have a current value capture, which brings up, so that one there is programmatic recording, programmatic blocking recording. Does that even work? I mean, okay, well, anyway, so there's that. This would be...
that you could write that yourself now, probably in 2 lines, right?
Presumably, except as the code runs, yes, you could. Yes. Okay, current value capture would bring up a GUI to start stop, accumulating the time series. But now the question in this case, in that first case, it's very obvious what it returns. Current value time series simply returns the time series. Right? In this case, it's much less obvious what it returns. In that case, it can either be a printer, like image capture or something else. Now, notice that, or like audio capture, where it is, you know, when it's done, it returns. What's the trade-off between things where when it's done, it returns versus print it? I mean, these things which are fundamentally temporal.
I think that the ones that we looked at, you know, it doesn't seem totally wrong what they do, the image capture case.
No, not on their own. But and the reason for that is images are instantaneous, and so
Yeah.
it makes sense to snap many of them. Audio, it's a little weird. You know, you could imagine saying, I mean, like you could imagine snapping multiple 3-second audio things, but that's more obscure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that means that capture, so similarly, you know, like screen capture, for example, right? So that is doing.
That's another one you should have had there on the list, right?
Yeah. Whoops, what happened
Oh, we
there?
had that?
What is it? Isn't that what is it?
Notebook
Current?
capture?
No, this is what it is. It's current. That's what it is. It's a current screen image. Okay? There, that's the current screen image. See what I'm saying? So that's a current image guy. That's like current image. Am I making sense? So that's another example up there of an instantaneous one. In fact, directly analogous to current image. Okay, and analogous to instantaneous value there is device read is also an instantaneous value. Make sense?
Yeah. The other thing, one thing that you have to deal with when you're starting to go at fast data rates, and that's same with instrument control. They can't usually, because I view our device framework primarily as sort of the slower stuff, so which is instrument control rather than sort of the detailed processing.
Yeah.
You know, but once you start going faster, what you typically want and does make sense is to get sort of chunks. You know, so
Right.
you're not at the same rate, but you get them sort of accumulated up in certain chunks, and that's exactly.
We have device read buffer.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. That's exactly how the audio framework works underneath.
Well, okay. So instantaneous value. There's a subcase of this, which is okay. So there is another case here, which is instantaneous value of a trailing time series, of which device read buffer is an example. I think that's trailing as opposed to prospective, forward-looking. Open a device, read the contents of its buffer. Yeah. Yeah. I don't think it blocks, does it? Oh, it is a blocking function. Okay, I'm wrong. Well, okay, but then it's buffering, so that is a blocking function. This case here is a blocking function. We discussed, I think, having a non-blocking version of this that just reads whatever was in the buffer. So that reads the historic, no, that reads the future buffer. Am I making sense? As opposed to reading the what's in there before buffer.
Yeah. So in a way, there is a notion of an event that says, I'm ready, the buffer is full.
Yes, that's correct. In fact, it has a specific criterion for buffer for completion.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's come back. Listen, the thing we have to solve right now, I mean, we need to come back to all of this, but the thing we have to solve right this moment is the network packet capture issue. So audio record, I don't think we're going to be able to change at this late stage anyway. My suggestion for the network packet capture thing is the following. Okay, I was suggesting Actually, it wasn't network packet capture, it was network packet recording, but we haven't really got what is our generic form for recording something. I mean, it actually would be network packet time series, except that we don't happen to be returning time series, nor should we. Okay, actually, I would like to, yeah, okay. Could be an explicit time series, and some of them, or could be a sequence of values, a sequence of event-like values, right? So that would be more like, I mean, we could make network packet recording return an event series, although I think it would be kind of silly. Is Ian still with us?
Unfortunately not. He had to drop.
Okay. That's unfortunate since he's the main one who is working on this. But let me go through this design for a second, because I had a proposed design, and at least we can. So my proposed design was to say, network packet recording of, and then the simple case would be just T. Oh boy! See, this got. Can you did somebody the mail that I sent out yesterday?
You had an association.
No, I remember. Okay, because this also has ports and services and so on. But the general case that I was proposing was network packet recording of an association that could contain like duration, if that's what we're calling it, expression, which is an expression to be evaluated during the thing, count or packets. Possibly we could generalize that to count, etc. And then all the various features of what the port is, etc. So the idea there will be you could specify, whichever of those things you want, and it will keep going. We have to decide what it does if you specify multiple things. Actually, an alternative would be, I mean, what I'm trying to avoid, okay, so network packet recording of n could record just n packets of a quantity, could record for that time. But we could also have something where we say things like this, where we support something like that, where we basically are specifying a naked element of the association if we wanted to, or a full association. Anybody have comments on this, or is this not really the right set of people for this?
So I think that what you want to set up is various things that can say, record under these circumstances or return me a result. At most it's not many packets, only this type of packets.
Didn't I have a section here on network packets?
No, but the last time you saved it in core software engineering.
Yes.
We are reviewing that. I mean, it's right there. It's right there. The issue that we were dealing with is there are two cases that were not covered here. One is that you want the recording to happen during the evaluation of this expression. Okay, so a typical example of that would be URL execute or whatever. I want to know when I go to that website, what weird packets get sent back and forth. Or when I do this thing, what actually happens. See what I'm saying? Like, for example, the URL execute will be a really good way to do testing of a website because it'll get you back. I mean, in that particular case, you might actually like a time series back. And that's a question which Ian would be the one to answer, whether we should be returning an event series from network packet recording. because, you know, network packet capture, to remind you guys, if we do, well, let's do network packet recording. Yes. You could do it. You could do it, you know, whichever one finishes first, you exit. I'm not sure it's the greatest idea to do that, but that's, I mean, that is the issue, right? So what happened here? So, you know, let's talk about returning this as an event series. Does it make sense, or is it just silly? I think it's kind of just silly.
I think it's mostly silly.
Yeah. Because most of the time you just want to know what were the packets, and then one of the facts about the packet is when was the packet sent. But that's certainly not the only fact that you want to know about the packet.
Yeah, you might want to do sort of, and that's not time or events here. It doesn't support that, but some, you know, okay, leads totally into another thing. But one important thing, which comes up in spatial, which is that you look at the relations between these time points, which are events.
Yep.
No, and that's same for points in space. You look at, you know, like trees, how they're related to each other.
Yep.
And that's much more interesting to do in many cases, and that's really what makes sense. But that's not how.
Well, it's like a mail, you know, like threading in a mail sequence.
Yeah, but there are different kinds of, you know, there's statistical kinds of things that you can say about that. Like there should be, you know, if it's a queue thing, like many computer systems are, then, you know, there's going to have something that looks like an exponential distribution typically.
Yes, but I mean, but what you're saying is that through these packets, there are ones that are like my Zoom packets bouncing back and forth that are related to each other, like an email thread would be related, even though there is a sequence to email. Like this, there is a sequence.
Right.
See, again, email is another case where the sequence is probably the most important, and the specific time of whether it arrived at 3:22 or 3:23 p.m. is not really that important.
Right.
Okay, let's return to this though, because what we're trying to do, the criteria are a certain number of packets, an amount of time. I kind of think the amount of time should be the default because I think it's the most useful, but it's a little bit silly because, you know, we have units, and so we could, you know, disambiguate that with units versus an integer. But we've got a packet count. We've got duration, expression. We've then got various kinds of filters, like, you know, which are a little bit different. I mean, that's not. These are the descriptors of how long to record for. Then here, we're recording what service are we recording on, et cetera, et cetera. You know, is it HTTP, and what's the IP address, and so on. Right, so that's being specified there as an association, which is a filtering association. Make sense? So there's the
I kind of think that may not be quite the right group, you know, and shouldn't EM be part of it too?
Yes. I mean, the two things are how long and what. How long to record and what to record. Those are the two things we want to specify. And interestingly, if we look at device read time series, okay, it's very much analogous. It's got a TDT and then param, which is pretty much the same story as here. Well,
how long is in the middle? How long in resolution is in the middle?
Well, no, because it's got a device at the beginning. Well, the device is just a bank switch of what the heck you're talking about.
But it's what you record, right?
No, because this is saying record, well,
I
This
mean,
is
the
saying
device
record
is
from
what you record, right? And then the parameters. So it has
no, it's
two.
not what you're. The parameters are like, are you recording? I think the parameters are parameters of the device. That is
Exactly. So what is device plus you know, you don't want to record everything. It's some parameters in the device.
that's correct. Like for
Okay.
this,
So
you don't
what
want to
is the
record.
device plus parameters?
That is true, except that the network interface. I mean, network packet recording generically is listening to all network traffic, and so what we're doing here is simply to filter the network traffic.
Right.
Okay. Well, so I'm afraid we're going to have to iterate with, but does anybody else have opinions about this? I mean, this is just a messy design thing, because particularly this thing that goes across an expression, that's a new thing. The only thing I can think of that is analogous to this is absolute timing. You know what I'm saying? Or we don't even have a memory used thing. But in other words, what happened to your machine? You know, we could imagine something where, you know, where we could imagine something where, for example, we could imagine a thing that says, you know, machine power used or something during a computation that could be like absolute time. And this is, yes, we do. Right. But I mean, this is something a little bit like that, except it's not quite the same, because this is all network activity. Somebody's making background noise, by the way. Yeah, I know that. But the problem with this is that the packets don't necessarily have anything to do with that expression being evaluated. They could be a random ping packet that arrived from, you know, the other side of your network. See what I'm saying? But during the period of the expression evaluation, it is looking at all network traffic, right? As opposed to network traffic attributable to this expression evaluation. Make sense? So it's a little bit of a weird and different thing, and it's a little bit of an approximate thing. It's kind of a what do you mean both are useful? Absolutely, but the point that I'm making is if you say trace of a particular expression, everything that is in that trace output was the result of evaluating that expression. It's not like if you have an asynchronous task running at the same time, trace doesn't say, oh, and by the way, this computation was done at the same time in the asynchronous task. See what I'm saying? Whereas network packet recording, what's that? It's absolutely the case. It's a recursive thing going through the evaluator. It has nothing to do with other random junk that happens to be happening in preemptive kernels and things like this. So, I mean, anybody got any thoughts about the way to handle this? I mean, it seems to me that what we should do, that this is the least crazy way that I've seen to do it. That, well, maybe we should do it like this, where you can have, where the first argument is something of the form thing and then amount. And the default would be perhaps a count of the number of packets. Any comments from people? I mean, look, one way we could do this, we could say network packet recording of n is packet count of quantity, or at least a time quantity is time. And we could do function is expression. With that just being evaluated, or we could do something like hold here. I think that's rather grotesque, and I don't like that. Anybody got comments on these? Nope. Okay. Then let's wait, and we'll have to pick this up again with Ian, perhaps late today or tomorrow. Okay.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And then we need to separately loop back and finish this discussion of how to deal with all these different cases. Yeah, I mean, this is this current value time series. For mouse position, time series makes sense, but for other things, you just don't care about the times that much. You just care what happened. All right. Anything else, guys? Oh, okay. See you all soon.